Imagine a room. It is built with layers of concrete and steel. It floats on vibration-damping springs. Inside, the walls are lined with wedges of fiberglass foam that look like the teeth of a dragon. It is located at the Microsoft headquarters in Washington or at Orfield Laboratories in Minnesota. It is the anechoic chamber, the echo-free room. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, it is the quietest place on Earth. The background noise of a quiet bedroom is about 30 decibels. The background noise of this room is minus 20 decibels. It is so quiet that it absorbs 99.9% of all sound. No traffic, no wind, no hum of electricity. Absolute, pure silence. You might think this sounds peaceful. You might think it sounds like paradise. But if you stepped inside, closed the heavy door, and turned off the lights, you would not find peace. You would find terror. Most people cannot last more than 45 minutes in this room. Why? Because when the external noise stops, the internal noise begins. Within minutes, your ears, desperate for stimulation, start to amplify the sounds of your own biology. You hear a loud thumping sound. That is your heart beating. You hear a rushing river. That is the blood flowing through your veins. You hear a high-pitched hiss. That is the electrical firing of your nervous system. You hear a grinding crunch. That is your bones moving against each other when you turn your head. You realize that you are a noisy biological factory, but then something worse happens. The brain, deprived of sensory input, starts to panic. It thinks it is dying. It thinks the connection to reality has been cut. So it starts to create its own reality. You start to see lights that are not there. You hear voices that are not speaking. You lose your balance because your inner ear has no acoustic reflection to orient itself. You start to hallucinate. This room proves a terrifying truth about the human condition. We are addicted to noise. We are terrified of silence. We fill our lives with podcasts, music, notifications, TV, and small talk because the moment the noise stops, we are forced to face the stranger inside us. Welcome back to Hidden Atlas. Today, we are going to turn down the volume. We are going to explore the science of silence. We are going to investigate why every major prophet, from Moses to Muhammad to Buddha, had to isolate themselves in caves before they could change the world. We are going to decode the ancient Sufi practice of Khalwa, or the 40-day retreat, and compare it to modern sensory deprivation tanks. We are going to analyze the neuroscience of the default mode network and how silence creates a hard reset for the brain. And finally, we are going to ask the ultimate question: is silence just the absence of sound, or is silence a frequency? Is it the carrier wave of the divine? To understand this, we have to look at how our brain processes reality. We live in a world of sensory overload. Every second, your eyes take in millions of bits of data. Your ears process thousands of frequencies. Your skin feels temperature and texture. Your brain is a filter. Its job is to block out 99% of reality so that you can focus on survival. This filtering mechanism is called the thalamus. But there is another network in the brain called the default mode network. This is the network that is active when you are not doing anything specific. It is the voice in your head, the narrator, the ego. It constantly tells you stories about yourself. I am tired. I am worried about money. What did she mean by that text? I need to buy milk. This network is loud. It is a constant static noise that drowns out everything else. The mystics realized thousands of years ago that you cannot hear the voice of the universe if the voice of the ego is screaming. They realized that you cannot tune in to the frequency of God if your internal radio is stuck on the frequency of survival. So they developed a technology to crash the system. They developed a way to shut down the thalamus and silence the default mode network. They didn't have anechoic chambers, they had caves. The history of human spirituality is the history of people leaving the city to go into the silence. Moses went up to Mount Sinai. He left the Israelites behind. He entered the cloud. For 40 days and 40 nights he fasted and listened. Jesus went into the desert. For 40 days he faced the devil and the silence. Muhammad climbed the mountain of light, Jabal al-Nur. He sat in the tiny cave of Hira. He sat there for days, weeks, staring at the dark rock, listening to the wind. Why? Why couldn't they receive the revelation in the marketplace? Why couldn't Gabriel come to them while they were having dinner with their families? Because the signal requires bandwidth, and normal life consumes all your bandwidth. The cave is not a place to hide. The cave is a satellite dish. By cutting off the visual and auditory noise, the prophets induced a state of sensory deprivation. In this state, the brain waves shift. They move from beta waves, which is the state of stress and logical thinking, to alpha waves, the state of relaxation, and then they drop deeper into theta waves. Theta is the state of lucid dreaming. It is the border between the conscious and the subconscious. And finally, delta waves, the state of deep connection. In this deep silence, the brain stops processing input from the outside world, and it switches to output from the internal world. The brain stops talking and starts listening, and that's when the download happens. But this process is not easy. It is not a peaceful vacation. It is a battle. When you first enter the silence, you don't meet God, you meet your demons. This brings us to the concept of the chilla, or the arba'in, the 40-day retreat. In the Sufi tradition, the number 40 is sacred. It takes 40 days for the embryo to change form in the womb. It rained for 40 days during the flood of Noah. Moses spent 40 days on the mountain. The Sufis say it takes 40 days to break a habit and install a new program in the human biocomputer. So the dervishes created a practice called the khalwa. The word comes from khala, meaning emptiness or vacuum. The student enters a small cell. Often it is underground. Sometimes it is just big enough to sit in. It is dark. It is quiet. They are given very little food, just enough to stay alive. Olives, water, a piece of bread, and they are told to stay there for 40 days. This sounds like torture to the modern mind. We panic if the Wi-Fi goes down for 10 minutes. We get anxious if we are alone in an elevator. But for the seeker, this cell is a cocoon. Let's look at the biology of what happens during a 40-day isolation. Day 1 to 10, the withdrawal. The first week is hell. The brain is addicted to dopamine. It craves stimulation. It wants to check the news. It wants to see a face. It wants to hear a song. When you cut off the supply, the brain throws a tantrum. Anxiety spikes. The chatter of the ego becomes deafening. You remember every mistake you ever made. You worry about the future. This is the detox phase. The psychological poisons are coming to the surface. Day 11 to 20, the hallucination. As the deprivation continues, the brain starts to project. Just like in the anechoic chamber, the Sufi might see lights. They might hear voices. They might see demons or angels. The master warns the student, do not pay attention. These are just the screensavers of the mind. Keep breathing. Keep chanting. Ignore the show. This is the brain trying to fill the void. It is the last stand of the ego. Day 21 to 30, the silence. Then something shifts. The noise stops. The brain realizes that no input is coming. It gives up the fight. The dopamine receptors reset. The cortisol, stress hormone, drops to 0. The body enters a state of hibernation. The metabolism slows down. The heart rate slows down. The student enters a state of timelessness. They lose track of days. Past and future dissolve. There is only the eternal now. Day 31 to 40, the resurrection. In the final phase, the student is no longer in the dark. The cell is physically dark, but for the student, it is filled with light. The pineal gland, starved of external light, begins to produce its own luminosity. It synthesizes pinealine and potentially DMT. The third eye opens. The student feels a sense of unity with the cosmos. They feel the presence of the divine, not as a theory, but as a tangible substance filling the room. They have tuned the radio to the God frequency. When they emerge from the cell on the 40th day, they are like a newborn baby. Their senses are incredibly sharp, colors are vivid, sounds are musical, but more importantly, they are no longer slaves to the noise. They carry the silence with them. This practice is not limited to Islam. The Tibetan Buddhists have the dark retreat. They stay in total darkness for weeks to realize that the light they see is the light of their own mind. The Christian Desert Fathers lived in caves in Egypt to fight the noonday demons and find the peace of Christ. The shamanic traditions involve vision quests alone in the wilderness. The technology is universal. To reboot the computer, you have to unplug it. But today, we have invented a world where unplugging is almost impossible. We carry the noise in our pockets. The smartphone is the anti-Khalwa device. It ensures that we are never, ever alone. It ensures that the default mode network is always fed. This has consequences. We are seeing a rise in mental illness that tracks perfectly with the rise of the smartphone. We are seeing a generation that has lost the ability to self-soothe, because self-soothing comes from sitting with your pain in silence until it transforms. If you distract yourself every time you feel pain, the pain never transforms. It just accumulates. Modern science is starting to prescribe silence as medicine. Neuroscientists have found that silence stimulates neurogenesis. It grows new brain cells in the hippocampus, the region associated with memory and learning. 2 hours of silence a day can reverse brain damage caused by stress. But there is a deeper mystery here. Why is silence so powerful? Is it just about resting the brain? Or is there something hidden within the silence itself? The Sufis say that sound is a creation, but silence is an attribute of the essence. Sound has a beginning and an end. Silence has no beginning and no end. Sound is limited. Silence is infinite. Therefore, if you want to know the infinite, you must enter the silence. Rumi has a pen name he used in many of his poems. He didn't call himself Rumi, he called himself Khamush. Khamush means the silent one. He wrote 50,000 verses of poetry, yet he called himself silent. Why? Because he knew that words are just the dust on the mirror. He said, "Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation." Let's dive deeper into the physics of this language. What happens to the human energy field when we stop speaking and stop listening to noise? In physics, we talk about the signal-to-noise ratio. If you want to send a clear message to a satellite deep in space, you need a strong signal and very low background noise. The universe is filled with the cosmic microwave background radiation, the hum of the Big Bang. To hear the subtle signals of a pulsar or a distant galaxy, astronomers have to filter out this noise. The human soul is a receiver. The divine transmission is constant. It never stops. We are closer to him than his jugular vein. The signal is right there. It is strong. So why don't we hear it? Because our local noise is too loud. Our internal static, fear, desire, planning, regretting, jams the frequency. When you practice silence, you are improving your signal-to-noise ratio. You are not creating the signal. The signal is already there. You are just reducing the interference. But there is another aspect, the concept of resonance. Everything in the universe vibrates. Your body vibrates. Your thoughts vibrate. When you are surrounded by the chaotic noise of the city, traffic, sirens, angry people, television, your own vibration entrains to that chaos. You become dissonant. You feel jagged. This is destructive interference. Silence is the baseline frequency of nature. When you go into a forest or a desert, it is quiet, but it is not empty. It is vibrating with the Schumann resonance, the heartbeat of the earth, 7.83 hertz. When you enter this silence, your body entrains to the earth. Your heart rate slows down to match the rhythm of the planet. You become coherent. This is constructive interference. The sensory deprivation tank, or float tank, is the modern technological version of the cave. It was invented by Dr. John Lilly in the 1950s. You lie in a tank of water saturated with Epsom salts. You float effortlessly. The water is skin temperature, so you don't feel where your body ends and the water begins. It is pitch black. It is soundproof. Gravity is neutralized. Light is neutralized. Sound is neutralized. People who float report profound experiences. They feel their body dissolving. They feel like they are floating in deep space. They solve complex problems. They have creative breakthroughs. Why? Because the brain spends huge amounts of energy processing gravity and sensory data. When you free up that energy, the brain uses it for higher processing. It unlocks the latent powers of consciousness. This confirms the Sufi theory. The body is a heavy anchor. The senses are the chains. If you can temporarily cut the chains, the ship of the soul naturally floats up. It doesn't need effort. Ascension is natural. Gravity is the only thing holding us down. There is a concept in Tasawwuf called fana, annihilation. It means to disappear, to become nothing. Silence is the practice of fana. When you speak, you are asserting your existence. I am here. I have an opinion. I exist. When you are silent, you fade into the background. You become a witness. You make space for something else to exist. There is a beautiful story about Bayazid Bastami, a great Sufi mystic. He spent years searching for God. He knocked on the door. He shouted. He prayed. Finally, the door opened. A voice asked, "Who is there?" Bayazid said, "It is I, Bayazid." The door slammed shut. He went away for another 20 years. He practiced silence. He erased his ego. He came back. He knocked. The voice asked, "Who is there?" Bayazid whispered, "There is no one here but you." The door opened. This is the secret of the empty room. You cannot invite the king into a room that is already full of junk. You have to empty the furniture. You have to clean the floor. Silence is the broom. It sweeps away the words, the concepts, the theology, the arguments. It creates the emptiness, kala, that is necessary for presence, hudur. But we must be careful. There is a difference between dead silence and living silence. Dead silence is the silence of an empty house where no one lives. It is lonely, it is cold. Living silence is the silence of two lovers looking into each other's eyes. No words are spoken, but a massive amount of communication is happening. It is a pregnant silence. The mystic seeks living silence. They are silent not because they have nothing to say, but because they are overwhelmed by the presence. They are in a state of awe, hera. When you see a magnificent sunset, you stop talking, you just look. The beauty silences you. The Sufi lives in a permanent state of that sunset. So how do we bring this into our noisy modern lives? We cannot all go to a cave for 40 days. We have jobs, we have kids. We need a micro halwa. We need a strategy to build a cave in the middle of the city. The Naqshbandi Sufi order has a principle called Khalwa dar Anjuman, solitude in the crowd. It means to be outwardly with people, but inwardly alone with the divine. To walk in the market, to talk, to drive, but to keep a secret chamber of silence in your heart where no one else enters. This is the ultimate mastery. It is easy to be peaceful on a mountaintop. It is hard to be peaceful in traffic, but the traffic is where the test is. Here is the hidden Atlas protocol for integrating the power of silence into the digital age. 1. The digital sunset. You must create an artificial cave in your house. Decide on a time, let's say 9 p.m. After this time, no screens, no phones, no TV, no inputs. Turn off the Wi-Fi router if you have to. Dim the lights. Reclaim the last 2 hours of your day for silence. This signals your pineal gland that the day is over. It allows the dust to settle before you sleep. Your dreams will change. Your sleep will deepen. 2. The first 5 minutes. When you wake up, do not touch your phone. The first 5 minutes of the morning are sacred. Your brain is in a theta state. You are programmable. If the first thing you see is a stressful email or a tragedy on the news, you have poisoned your water for the whole day. Keep the first 5 minutes for silence. Just sit, drink your tea, look out the window. Set the tone of peace before the noise begins. 3. The car sanctuary. For many people, the car is the only place they are alone, but we fill it with radio, podcasts, phone calls. Try driving in silence. Turn everything off. Listen to the hum of the engine. Watch the road. Use the commute as a decompression chamber. Arrive at work centered. Arrive at home cleared. 4. The vow of silence, mauna. Try a challenge, half a day a week or 1 hour a day. Commit to not speaking a single word. Tell your family, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday, I am in silence. When you stop the output of words, you conserve massive amounts of energy. You will realize how much unnecessary talking you do. Why did I want to say that? It was just ego. It was just complaint. Silence acts as a filter for the truth. When you finally speak, your words will have weight. They will have power. 5. The dark therapy. If you can, try to spend time in total darkness. Use a sleep mask if you don't have a dark room. Lie on the floor for 20 minutes in total blackness and silence. Let the scary thoughts come up. Don't fight them. Let the boredom come. Boredom is the gatekeeper. Most people turn back at the gate of boredom. They pick up the phone. But if you push through the boredom, if you stay in the dark for 10 more minutes, you break through to the other side. You find the sweetness of nothing. We are afraid that if we stop doing, we will cease to exist. But the truth is the opposite. When we stop doing, we finally start being. The name of God is not a word. The name of God is the silence from which all words emerge. Look at the page of a book. The black ink is the information, but the white paper is the silence holding the information. Without the white background, the black letters would be unreadable. Silence is the background of existence. We are calling you to find the white paper behind the text of your life. We are calling you to tune in to the God frequency. It is broadcasting right now. It is broadcasting in the space between your heartbeats. It is broadcasting in the gap between your thoughts. You don't need to learn a new language. You just need to stop speaking the old one for a while. Be silent, that the Lord who gave you a tongue may speak. Be silent, that the soul may fly out of the cage of words. Thank you for listening to The Silence with us. This episode was an invitation to turn off. So, here is your challenge. When this video ends, don't click on the next video. Don't look at the comments. Just close your eyes and give yourself 1 minute of absolute silence, right now. Subscribe to Hidden Atlas. We are mapping the invisible. Until next time. Shh.